everyone! My name is Alyssa Goodo. I am a connection coach, and I wanted to talk today about an important topic that a good friend of mine actually recommended that I do. And to be honest, I didn't know if I was quite up to it or not, but it's an important topic, and it was too important not to. So we're talking about suicide awareness, and I know, especially like my good friend who is a veteran, veterans, especially with PTSD, they struggle with this a lot, and I think there's a lot of stigma around it even today in our culture that has now begun to kind of move even more in the direction of mental health awareness and getting resources out there and that sort of thing and making it more comfortable to talk about. I think people still kind of have this misconception that they're somehow weak if they have these feelings and experiences. And from someone who's personally gone through it, I remember a time when I was so weighed down and lost in the chaos of the darkness that I was experiencing. I didn't know how to deal with it, and I kind of got lost in it to a point where I didn't understand what to do with it. And I thought that made me weak. And I just really wanted to talk to somebody about it. And I didn't have anyone that I could talk to about it, because if you're going through something hard or something challenging, people kind of give you a weird reaction because they can't relate. And especially what I was going through at a certain age, whenever you're going through something really hard, like in my case, our brother was diagnosed with schizophrenia. And if you've ever known someone with it or gone through it yourself, it's something hard to deal with, and the whole family is affected by it. And so going through this and having to explain to my friends what I was dealing with and how we were so sure of this person that we had grown up with and grew to love and knew personally was now transforming into someone different, and we were seeing them lose themselves. You can't necessarily explain that to people, even if they're your good friends, even if they mean well. You can't necessarily explain that to other children who haven't gone through it and who haven't experienced something that life-changing. And in middle school and high school, the beginning stages of high school, those are hard ages to talk about anything challenging. Or if sometimes maybe your parents are going through divorce or something, if people don't always respond to those things extremely well. And it wasn't necessarily that I was actively thinking of ways to kill myself. It was just I was so held down by the darkness that I just didn't want to live anymore. Getting up and getting dressed and continuing with my day was such a chore. And what I didn't realize was that I wasn't capable of carrying these things that I was experiencing in a way that was enlightening and beneficial to others rather than controlling me and taking over my life. And I think that's what we all need to realize, is that you're not weak because it's just that you don't understand. You haven't gone through it, and you haven't learned how to deal with it in a way where you can soak it in and say, okay, this is what it is, and I need to talk about it to someone. I need to find people who understand, or I need to find someone who can help me get out of this situation. Whatever the circumstances, you have to be able to process it and deal with it before you can move on. And I think a lot of what I was dealing with was I didn't understand that I needed to have good coping skills. And I was just I was thinking like, well, I can deal with these things. It is what it is. I can't do anything about it. And so I would just kind of stuff the feelings away. And it's actually, there's actually a really good book called Feelings Buried Alive Never Die. And it's true. It's a true statement. If you're not dealing with what you're going through, if you're just hoping that it'll pass, or if you're just hoping, whatever the circumstance, of course it's not going to get better. You might think that it's getting better, you might think that it's past, but it's going to represent itself in some way in your life. Either something later on in life is going to trigger it, and you're not going to know what to do with it, because it'll bring you right back to that moment of like that inner child in you where you're like, I can't deal with this on a reasonable level, and so I'm just going to shut down, or I'm going to lash out, or however you respond to it. Or maybe it will represent itself physically, and maybe you will be physically battling this old thing that you thought that you were over already. And so what I hope we take away from our culture today, now that it's moving even more toward mental health awareness and these things, is that don't be ashamed to get help. Don't be ashamed to say, I am going through this, I'm experiencing these things, or I have gone through it already. Give that to somebody else. Bring it to someone who can professionally help you, a licensed professional who can talk you through it, and who can maybe you need, something to deal with it like medicine, or maybe you can get help by also doing physical fitness and eating better. There are different needs that everybody has, and there's not a one-way approach to anything. Just because one type of diet may work for you doesn't mean that it will also work for somebody else, because our needs are different. We all start from different places. And so I hope you don't feel ashamed if you're going through something like this. And if you've already gone through it and you made it through, I'm so proud of you. But also, don't be ashamed to share your story, because I think a lot of us would be surprised by how many people have gone through this already, and how many people you can actually affect and benefit by saying, I've been there too, I get it. And that's where I've come in my life, is that even though it was hard and it was awful, it's also how I help so many people now. I'm not a licensed professional by any means or anything like that, but whenever people come and they just want to talk and they just want someone who can get it, like a support group, basically, I am like the number one support group, because we've seen a lot, we've done a lot, we've been through a lot, and it's okay. It's not like, oh, poor pitiful me, or it's not about attention. It's just, I've been there, I've done that, I've gotten through it, and if you just need some support and some encouragement that you'll get through it, please, I will gladly listen. I am here, and we can help you find the help that you need. And with so many available resources today for counselors and things like that, it doesn't always cost money, and you don't always have to go in person to see these people. There are hotlines that you can call, and you can just talk to somebody if you need that. There are apps, there are websites, there are live chats, there are all kinds of available resources that you can get to help you through these times. And so I'm going to try and find as much information from there as possible and link them down below in the description, so that way you can have those if you need them. Or if you know someone who's struggling with it, you can share it with them as well. So I hope that while we go through life and while we experience these things, if someone comes to you and they're like me and they don't necessarily know better, I guess you could say, that maybe you can't relate, but maybe you can have a resource for them to go to, and you can support them in your own way by sharing these resources. And so thank you for listening, and I hope we can all be more sympathetic and empathetic with people struggling with this. Bye.